and welcome back to Crown Conditioning with your host, Miss Texas 2022, me, Avery Bishop, Episode 2, School Programs. What are they? Why do we talk about school programs so much? Why do we do them so often? And how can you create a school program from scratch? Today I'm going to walk you through step by step how you can create your own lesson plan. Ooh, look at that transition. Okay, first things first. What is a school program? This mystery, this thing that's talked about all the time. Well, giving school programs is one of the main responsibilities as Miss Texas. I personally have given more than 100 this year, probably almost like 150 for thousands of students. School programs are subject to different time limitations due to school expectations. They are typically around 30 minutes, depending on the school's expectations. The content may change depending on the audience. For example, elementary students versus high school students. They incorporate activities, games, and interactive questions. They typically include a talent presentation, so your talent from Miss Texas, and it also normally includes visuals to keep students engaged. All of that to say, think of it as a lesson plan. You all have gone to school, whether that be at home, online, or in person, and have completed or sat through a lesson plan, a lecture, whatever you want to call it, that is probably 30 minutes. So pull from that personal experience. It is a lesson plan. So think of it as if you are creating or writing a lesson plan like a teacher. Creating a lesson plan for elementary students involves several key steps, including identifying learning objectives, selecting appropriate materials and activities, and assessing student understanding. So here is a general outline of the process. 1. Identify learning objectives. Begin by deciding what you want your students to learn from your lesson. I want my students to learn that it is important to incorporate and appreciate our differences. That's my main objective. Write down specific, measurable, and achievable learning objectives that are aligned with state or national standards. For example, do you want to teach them how to be confident or how to ask for help when they're having any sort of mental health problems? Second, choose materials and activities. Based on the learning objective, let's go back to my example. I want to teach the importance of diversity and inclusion, the importance of equal representation. You now choose materials and activities that will help your students achieve those objectives. Make sure your materials and activities are age appropriate, right? Think about your audience and engaging for your students. Don't just speak for 30 minutes straight. Consider using a variety of teaching methods such as visual aids, hands-on activities, and group work. For example, Chandler Foreman had a Family Feud type game and had physical cardboard sort of cutout things, had a presentation. Mallory and I used letter acronyms and wooden letters to be our visual. And I had my book and a large presentation of the characters in my book that was usually presented behind me when I was giving my program. Third, you want to assess your students' understanding. Throughout the lesson, check for student understanding by asking questions or having students complete short activities. At the end of the lesson, use a more formal assessment, such as a quiz or worksheet. Usually in large presentations, which is what you will usually be teaching as Miss Texas, you won't be able to break out in smaller groups and give activities like that. But if you're in a small group with maybe 30 students, you could definitely do some sort of assessment with quizzes or group handwritten activities. Finally, review and reflect. Review the lesson with your students, summarizing the key concept at the very end of your 30-minute program, highlighting the most important takeaways. What I do to summarize everything is I reteach and ask my students if they remember what GROW, GROW, the acronym, stands for. That's how I usually end my program and assess whether they remember what they learned. Now that you understand sort of the step-by-step process, the things you need to take into consideration when outlining your lesson plan, how do you actually get started? This is the hardest part. How do I just actually create a blank page into an actual lesson plan? Well, There's no need to reinvent the wheel unless you absolutely want to. There are millions of resources and lesson plans already available about your chosen subject online. You can literally Google school lesson plans on, for example, in my case, diversity and inclusion, and there were hundreds of resources for teachers to use and lesson plans that were already created. I took that as inspiration. Remember, don't copy word for word. Take that as inspiration and incorporate it by putting in your own personal spin. You can also use ChatGPT, which was not around when I was creating my lesson plan, and literally have AI write out an automatic lesson plan, for example, on confidence or how to encourage students to volunteer. You can literally just have this AI create the lesson plan for you. And then finally, be sure to implement activities or games you've done yourself while in school. Remember your favorite elementary teacher and the kinds of lessons they taught. Pull from that too to inform your lesson plan creation. Once you have a general idea of the subject and topic you want to teach and the activities you may want to incorporate, now it's time to actually write out talking points. Here's the actual screenshot of how I organized my first initial draft. I organized it by key point, how long I wanted to dedicate that key point within the 30-minute time frame I gave myself. I wrote out a script. I tried to write it out word for word initially, and then I put in like whether or not it was in accordance to the TEKS state curriculum standards for the state of Texas. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. So it's kind of changed over the hundreds of school programs I've given, but this is what the initial draft looked like. I printed this out and had it with me for maybe the first 2 weeks I was giving my school program, just so that I had something with me to follow along in case I forgot anything. Here is an example of I myself going into ChatGPT, which I mentioned earlier, and prompting it to write out here at the top left, write a lesson plan for fifth graders on the importance of being kind. And the ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence, created something automatically. You can do that something similar to what you want to talk about. Maybe it's about your social platform. Doesn't have to always align with your platform, but this is also another way for you to get started from a blank page in case you're having like some sort of brain fart, for example. Now, keep in mind, your programs will be very different dependent on your audience. Far left is the elementary school programs I give. I have GROW, my GROW acronym, with lots of young or youthful oriented school activities where we talk about Marvel superheroes and Disney princesses. For my career and professional keynote speeches, as well as college aged students, I implement talking points about social media, for example, and insecurities, being very vulnerable about being poor, for example. Those things I specify for an audience of people who are older than, say, like 16. I have maybe like 4 to 5 different speeches in my back pocket all at once, and I usually take talking points from the different speeches and put them together depending on the event's requirements and specifications. Finally, here are my last tips and tricks. Yeah, that's grammatically correct. Acronyms like GROW, such as mine, are easy for children to remember. So maybe you want to start off by figuring out your acronym first and then writing out your lesson plan. That's another way to approach it. When writing speeches, because writing lesson plans is very similar to writing speeches, think in threes. Psychology research shows that humans think and remember in threes. 3 main points with 3 personal stories and 3 examples. Ask for help. My social media followers actually defined GROW for me when I was sitting down and writing out my lesson plan. They helped me come up with give kindness, respect, open mind, open heart, and welcome differences. Then draft out your lesson plan first, then find a way to incorporate your talent. Historically, Miss Texas usually presents her talent during her school lessons or school programs. Of the 150 school programs I've given, have done my talent at 50% of them. Oftentimes, schools don't have the equipment for me to sing or present my song. I sing How Far I'll Go, but I change it to How Far I'll Grow. From Moana, the Disney princess. It's always a hit. But if you're a dancer, literally don't stress about it, okay? Don't try to think you have to throw in a dance number in the middle of your school program, oftentimes you're not going to be able to do it anyways. So focus on just writing out the lesson plan. Why did I go backwards? There you go. I end by giving you these resources. I've actually filmed my middle school program. I will likely, by the time you watch this, will have my elementary school program fully filmed. I have my school activities I use for elementary filmed that you can click on. I linked ChatGPT, which is the AI that will write out lesson plans for you. And then I linked the TEKS curriculum standards, which is the Texas core curriculum standards. And it will be easier for when you reach out to schools to let them know, hey, this is in accordance to the required curriculum across the state. They are more likely to hear you out and allow you to present your school program. That's it for episode 2. I try to keep this a little bit faster than my social media episode because I don't want to, make you sit there and listen to me talk the whole time. But hopefully you can access this program. Click on the links. Happy lesson planning and creating your school program. Remember also to implement all of your personal story and personal experiences into your school program as much as possible. And I wish you the best. See you in the next episode.